The morning sun glared off the glass towers of Hartwell Enterprises, the kind of building that reflected the power of those inside and the invisibility of those who kept it shining. Inside the 37th floor, CEO Clara Voss stood behind her mahogany desk, her eyes sharp as the edge of her confidence. The world saw her as unstoppable, one of the youngest billionaires in New York, a self-made woman whose name was synonymous with innovation and dominance. But that morning, something small and ridiculous refused to cooperate: her computer. The machine froze just minutes before a billion-dollar presentation. She tapped the keys, frowned, and sighed impatiently. Then, with a hint of arrogance and amusement, she looked toward the janitor mopping the hall outside her office, Evan Cole, a man most employees never even noticed. "Hey," she called out, her tone playfully commanding, "maybe you can fix this. You look like you've got the magic touch." It was meant as a joke, a careless remark tossed like a pebble into still water. The assistants laughed under their breath. The janitor froze for a second, looking both startled and uncertain, then slowly approached. "Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, humility, and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, where true stories remind us that everyone has a story worth hearing." Evan didn't look like much, a man in his early 40s, his uniform faded, his boots worn from years of labor. His dark hair showed threads of gray, and his hands carried the calluses of someone who had done far too much with far too little. But there was something calm about him, something steady. Clara leaned back with her arms crossed, expecting a clumsy attempt or a shrug of confusion. Instead, Evan asked softly, "May I?" He took the mouse, pressed a few keys, opened the terminal, and began typing. The assistants stopped whispering. Within seconds, lines of code scrolled across the screen, something far beyond a janitor's casual knowledge. A few minutes later, the computer hummed back to life, running smoother than before. Clara's smile faded. "How did you?" she started, but Evan simply said, "You had a background process eating your memory. It's fixed now." He wiped his hands on his cloth, nodded politely, and turned back to his mop. That night, Clara couldn't stop thinking about it. The way he'd handled her computer wasn't luck. It was precision expertise. The next morning, curiosity got the better of her. She called her assistant, "Find out who that janitor is." The report came back thin. Evan Cole. Employed for 8 months. Single father. No college degree on record. Lived in a small apartment across town. Paid hourly. Nothing remarkable except, buried deep in an HR note, a line read, "Former software engineer, reference incomplete." That caught her attention. Days passed, but she couldn't shake the feeling there was more to him. One afternoon, she stayed late at the office, watching as the building emptied. Evan appeared quietly as always, sweeping the marble floors, humming softly. Clara stepped out. "Evan," she said, her tone softer now, "do you have a moment?" He nodded, setting his mop aside. She gestured to her desk. "I was curious, how did you learn to fix that? You seem to know exactly what to do." Evan hesitated, as though searching for a place between pride and pain. "I used to work in tech," he said finally. "Built systems, led projects. But life had other plans." Clara tilted her head, intrigued. "What kind of plans?" He smiled faintly, but it wasn't joy, it was the kind of smile people wear to hide scars. "My wife got sick. Cancer. I left everything to take care of her. When she passed, I had no savings left, no job waiting, and a son to raise. The world doesn't exactly wait for you to recover." He looked down, his voice quiet. "Cleaning floors keeps food on the table. That's all that matters." Clara felt a lump in her throat. She wasn't used to silence making her feel small, but for once, she didn't know what to say. She had built her empire on control, efficiency, results, but here was a man who had lost everything and still carried humility and grace. "I'm sorry," she said finally. He nodded politely. "Don't be. Life tests everyone differently." Then he picked up his mop and continued his work. From that night, Clara saw him differently. Every morning, when she passed him in the hallway, she noticed how others ignored him, how they walked past without so much as a glance. She began to feel uncomfortable with the way she once had too. One morning, she asked him for help again, but this time, sincerely. Evan, I'm setting up a new internal network. I could use someone who knows what they're doing. Would you take a look? He hesitated. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I'm the CEO, she said. No one's getting in trouble. He spent the next hour in her office, explaining how to secure systems, streamline workflows, and even prevent data breaches. Clara was stunned. His knowledge was years ahead of what her IT team was doing. Why haven't you gone back to tech? She asked softly. He shrugged. I tried. No one wants to hire a 40-something janitor with a resume gap. People see a mop before they see a mind. That line stayed with her all day. People see a mop before they see a mind. A week later, she called him to her office again, but this time, in front of her senior team. Everyone, she said, this is Evan Cole. He's joining the systems upgrade project temporarily. The room went silent. Whispers spread. A janitor, in their meeting? But Clara's tone left no room for argument. Evan spent the following days proving what true expertise looked like. He didn't just fix computers, he optimized entire systems. He spotted flaws others had missed for years. Within a month, company efficiency skyrocketed. Clara's board of directors noticed the improvement and praised her leadership, but she made sure they knew whose mind was behind it. Soon, she offered Evan a full-time position in the IT department. He refused at first, saying he didn't want charity. But Clara looked him in the eye and said, "It's not charity. It's recognition. You earned this." Evan accepted. Months passed, and the company continued to evolve under his quiet brilliance. Clara and Evan often stayed late working on projects, and during those nights, she learned more about humanity than she had in all her years of business school. She saw how he put his son first, how he never spoke bitterly about the past, and how he found beauty in simplicity. One day, Clara invited Evan to a conference where she was scheduled to speak about innovation. But instead of giving her usual talk about profits and productivity, she stood before the crowd and said, "Today, I want to introduce someone who taught me that success isn't always dressed in suits or sitting in corner offices. Sometimes, it's pushing a mop, carrying wisdom the world has forgotten to see." She called Evan to the stage. The audience rose in applause, not knowing the full story, but they could see the emotion in both their eyes. After the event, reporters swarmed her, asking if this was a publicity stunt. Clara smiled and said simply, "No. This is what leadership should look like." The story spread like wildfire. Within weeks, news outlets wrote about the janitor who changed a billion-dollar company. Evan's story inspired thousands of people, reminding them that talent doesn't vanish just because circumstances change, but behind all the headlines, something quieter, more beautiful was happening. Evan's teenage son, Ryan, watched his father with pride for the first time in years. "You did it, Dad," he said one evening. "Mom would have been proud." Evan smiled through tears. Maybe now she knows. Clara, too, found herself changed. For the first time in years, she stopped measuring worth by titles or net worth. She began investing in second-chance programs, offering roles to veterans, parents returning to work, and people who had fallen through society's cracks. Every time she did, she thought of Evan, and how one careless joke had turned into a lesson she'd never forget. On a quiet morning a year later, as the sunlight poured into her office, Clara looked up from her desk to see Evan walking in, now wearing a suit, carrying a small box. "What's that?" she asked. He smiled. "A gift. For everything." She opened it. It was a small framed plaque. Inside, engraved words read, "It takes only one person to see what others overlook." Clara's eyes welled up. "Thank you," she whispered. Evan nodded. "No, Clara. Thank you for seeing me." And for the first time, she realized how rare that was in a world obsessed with status, to truly see someone, without judgment or label. As the city buzzed below them, two very different lives that once collided by accident now stood as proof that kindness, respect, and humility could change everything.